All right, hello and welcome into another edition of 8Sports Nightcap here on WRIC Plus. Great show coming up this week. A lot of stuff's going on in the world of sports, right? It's crossover season. High school football is coming to the end. We got the postseason starting this Friday. Now we're talking college football playoffs. There's only a couple of weeks left in the season. College basketball season here. It's a busy time of year, and I thought what better person to bring on than someone that is kind of in the thick of it with me, sports reporter from Wavy, our sister station over in Norfolk, James Kattato. James, thanks so much for stopping by and talking some ball today.
Hey, the sister stations with the plus content, the CTV content, going at it with each other. I love it, man. I'm excited to hop on and talk sports with you.
Yeah, a busy time of year. Obviously, high school playoffs begin for us. I know we got some crossover with some of our teams playing some of yours. And then obviously the college basketball's picking up. For me, this is my favorite time of year to kind of jump into the conversation here is I love crossover season, how busy it gets. You know, during football season, you get kind of regimented, right? You know, you have, Monday I have this press conference, and the Tuesday I'm doing this. And then now it's like everything's flying at you at once.
It's all over the place, man. I mean, I know I can speak for us here. Like you said, ODU on Monday, Norfolk State on Tuesday, all football. But then it's like, 2 days ago, I did ODU football at 10:30 in the morning. Then the basketball teams at 1 and 2 respectively. And then the women come out, right? So it's like, it's a mess right now, but it's such a beautiful mess. I love it. So
yeah, talking about messes, there's a mess in the ACC right now with their standings. I mean, currently sitting at the ACC standings, Georgia Tech, UVA, Pittsburgh, SMU, Duke, Louisville, Miami. That's 7 teams that think that they have a shot to go to the ACC championship this year. Obviously, with our in-state connection being UVA, they're in a situation still where if they win out, they're looking pretty, but they have to go on the road to Duke this Saturday, and then, of course, their finale where they got to try to beat Virginia Tech, which is something they've struggled with forever. But, I mean, what do you make of this ACC mess? Do you think it's the fact that there's just so many teams in the conference now that it's it's like not everyone can play everyone, and so you have this jumbled mess at the end of the year?
I think it's so interesting because I was listening to the playoff committee and the panelists last night in the selection show talking about where there's a world where the ACC champion may not even make the college football playoff because, again, it's the highest ranked conference champions. That doesn't mean it's Power 4. So there are people putting scenarios out there where there's 2 Group of 5 schools that bunny hop an ACC champion, right? Right now, Miami's in the playoff, and they're not even in the picture for the ACC. Of course they are, right? But they're a 2-loss conference team, whereas there are so many teams with only 1 conference loss. UVA, I must say, super lucky with their scheduling to not have 2 conference losses on the season because that NC State game, obviously not an ACC game, even though it is. I think a lot of it rides on the health of Chandler Morris, right? What happens with UVA football, especially this weekend against Duke, where both teams are in contention for the ACC title game? I personally believe if Chandler Morris is healthy and he's playing, even still, this UVA offense has had a tough time as of late kind of figuring it out, putting points on the board, even though they're high-powered. They have Ross, they have Jamar Taylor. They can do a lot of things well, and we've seen them be explosive at times, but especially in the thick of conference play, it's been difficult for them. But I think if Chandler Morris is healthy, they get over Duke, and I could easily see a Georgia Tech UVA conference championship game. But don't discount Pitt, man. If they beat Notre Dame, that would be that would be colossal. And they would probably be in the picture even if they weren't in the ACC title game because they beat Notre Dame. So the ACC is a total mess right now. I don't hate the fact that UVA and Louisville slid, I think, 5 and 6 spots respectively in the college football playoff rankings. I think that was deserved because they were both upset. But right now, I mean, it's like if Chandler Morris is healthy, I could see a picture where UVA is in the title game.
It'll be it's a huge milestone already. I think people are online obviously already to complain about the lack of success with UVA this season, with the fact that losing to Wake Forest, they've won 8 games. The past 3 seasons they haven't made a bowl game, and we were talking about whether or not Tony Elliott was going to get fired if he didn't make it to a 6-win season. They're at 8 wins now, have an opportunity to finish with a 10-win season if they can finish out their last 2 games of the year. And now they're in a situation where they kind of control their own destiny. I think back to ACC Media Days down in Charlotte, and James Franklin, Tony Elliott was talking about the fact that, they want to compete for ACC championships, and then all the chatter online with, people joking on UVA, how dare you even think you could compete for an ACC title? And now here
Yeah.
they are, week 11, week 12 of this season, and they control their own destiny to play for an ACC championship game. It is remarkable what Tony Elliott has been able to do in Charlottesville, and even the buy-in from the fans. I mean, there hasn't been great crowd support, fan support for UVA football, since the 90s. And when we're on the game or at games on the sidelines, there's a different energy in the air that you haven't seen in Charlottesville in quite some time. Probably last, when Bryce Perkins was there with Mendenhall.
Yeah, 100%. And you brought up the point about the buy-in from this year's team and how new of a team really it is from last season. I think a lot of people were writing UVA off, not just because of their status over the past couple of seasons with their record, but like you lose Anthony Calandria too, who I know wasn't a consistent quarterback for you, but at times showed really promising flashes. And you see it this season, UNLV is a solid group of 5 football team, and he's the quarterback. He's the piece for that team. And then are you going to get a dominant number 1 wide receiver that you really haven't had since Malik Washington, right? So it's like, what does your team look like now? And then I think Tony Elliott brings in 50 plus transfers into the group, or maybe 30. I could be mistaken on that number, but he brought in dozens of transfers into this, and he was attacking the portal hard. So I give all the credit in the world to him, because like you said, UVA was a massive question mark coming into the season. So even if they were to lose out, which I don't think is going to happen, but even if they were, it's a successful season for UVA, because they're going to get a good bowl game regardless.
Yeah, let's take a look at the ACC standings before we move on here. See if this works for me. It does.
Nice.
You see here at the top, Georgia Tech sitting at 8-1 overall, 5-1. Kind of disappointing that they lost. It was kind of exciting there for a second that there was going to be this, powerful ACC team, and now they lose that game. Virginia loses their game, and now the conversation around the country is how weak the ACC is. When in reality, the SEC is beating each other all the time, but nobody bats an eye at that, right? But Pittsburgh's in a situation. If they win out, they get in. They're one of the few teams that have to play each other still, obviously. UVA plays Duke. Georgia Tech's playing Pittsburgh. SMU is still out. Absolutely in the conversation. Louisville can still get in. Duke is 5-4 and has a path to the ACC championship and the playoff, which is just it's crazy. And I think a lot of the problem here is just how big the conference is. You can't play everybody. You almost probably need to go back to divisions if you want to, have a more in order ACC. But Miami can even get in with a couple of teams losing that has one loss. But it's kind of hard to wrap your head around. I've done some research to try to figure out, who gets in where, and essentially it's for everybody. If you win out, you got a pretty good chance at it. Obviously, the 2 lost teams are not as fortunate as the 1 lost teams. But, talking about crazy messes and whatnot, what about our friends down in Blacksburg, Virginia Tech, in the middle of a coaching search, and they can't seem to, keep their names out of the rumor mill over the past few weeks? People are clamoring for James Franklin, but it's been so long now. People are saying that maybe he's using Virginia Tech as leverage. Who would you like to see on the sidelines of Blacksburg coaching the Hokies next year?
Well, it's hard, because when it comes to a job like Virginia Tech, when Brent Pry was fired, Virginia Tech was one of the premier openings. And then everybody else, it seemed like in college football, got fired, right? So now there's 5 or 6 jobs that are ahead of Virginia Tech in terms of status, right? So it's like Penn State, Florida, LSU. Like there's just names ahead of Virginia Tech now, where the premier coaches like a James Franklin may not be surprising if they go and they try to get those jobs, right? So I would love to see that. I think that they would have to back up a bag, and they just increase their athletic budget to be able to afford.
They're willing to. It sounds like they're willing to drop a bag for him specifically, because I will say, if they do bring him in, you got to think that that's a name that the donors would get behind and donate, maybe more so than someone that we'll talk about here in a second, like Bob Chesney.
I was going to actually bring up Bob Chesney, but I think that, touching a last point on James Franklin, he's good at recruiting in this area of Virginia. Yeah. There are kids who have come out of Virginia that go to Penn State that play for him. Most notably recently, somebody like maybe like a Keandre Lambert, right? Somebody who is a productive player who's now in the NFL, right? So I think that with how well he's recruited in Virginia. You know, Travis Johnson got an offer from Penn State, the Oscar Smith wide receiver, 4 stars going to Michigan, but it was, you know, Penn State was in the mix for potentially getting his commitment. So I could definitely see that, but I definitely think Bob Chesney could be the leading name just because of how well he's been at JMU. He's been successful. He's rebuilt the program, really not even a rebuild, but just
Yeah.
reloaded the program after Kurt Cignetti left.
Immediately. I mean, they were
There
incredible
was
last year too.
never there was
Yeah.
never like a down period for JMU. Bob Chesney comes in from a school that doesn't have a lot of success previous to JMU, what, Holy Cross, right?
Yeah.
And so then he comes in to JMU and there's no buffer period, even though they lost a ton of players. So I would love to see him get that job.
Yeah, I think if you're Virginia Tech and you've seen the success that Cignetti has had, right? And it's hard not to be like, well, is this guy just like, you know, Cignetti? Can he come in and make us a contender? And I think there is something there with it, you know, being JMU with the school in state that, you know, they've picked from JMU before. You think, the women's basketball coach whose name's alluding, Kenny Brooks was the women's basketball coach at JMU. Tech, you know, plucked him and had success.
Yep.
It'll be interesting to see. The more success JMU has, the higher stock Bob Chesney gets. You know, if USF kind of makes a blunder and Tulane loses a game, you know, there's a possibility that James Madison could be the highest ranked Group of 5, despite the fact that the committee didn't want to rank them this week. They still have a path to the playoff, I think. And if it's Bob Chesney and the Dukes playing in the college football playoff, he might have, you know, bigger fish to fry somewhere, maybe down in, you know, Louisiana or, you know, Gainesville.
I agree. Totally agree. I would say that I've seen JMU play this year. I can't speak for the teams in the American because I haven't seen them, but I've seen JMU play this year in person and their second half adjustments. You could make the argument that Bob Chesney is the best second half adjustment coach in the entire Group of 5. His ability to go, they're not a first half team. They're not a first half team historically this season, but the fact that, like, I think it was going into the Old Dominion game, they were outscoring Group of 5 opponents in the second half like 110-10, right? Like they know how to close games incredibly well. Alonzo Barnett III has just been so good coming off that ACL injury, and I don't know if people thought he would. That's why they brought in Matt Sluka from UNLV, right? Like Wayne Knight has been great for the running back. They have a top 5 team defense in college football. In my opinion, I know the Sun Belt's been a little down this year. I cover the Sun Belt because of Old Dominion in this market, but I would like to see James Madison make the college football playoff because I know a lot of the American conference, like fan bases and everything like that, like the Navies, the Tulanes, the North Texases, the Memphises, like they all get on James Madison fan pages and they're like, you guys don't deserve it. You guys play in an awful conference. I think James Madison is a really good team that just happens to be in a conference that's currently in a down year. So
Yeah.
I don't think it'd be a Liberty situation 2 years ago where they went to a New Year's Six bowl and got rolled by Oregon. I don't think it'd be that situation. I think JMU would be really competitive.
Yeah, left on their schedule, they got App State. They play a tough game against Washington State, who's making the trip back to Virginia again. They previously lost to UVA a few weeks back. And then Coastal Carolina, they should roll over. App State, normally a pretty good team. And like you said, the Sun Belt, 2 years ago was I think, better than the American. It's just kind of the way the cookie crumbles. The American is really good this year. They kind of have a jumbled mess right now in terms of what their standings look like. A lot of one-loss teams, even East Carolina. I mean, if they win out, they have an opportunity to play for a championship. They got to play Memphis, who right now is, a team that is turning a lot of eyes. South Florida's in that conversation. All these teams have a loss to a Group of 5 team, but a Power 4 team, and a lot of them have beaten a Power 4 team as well. So the who's going to get the Group of 5 situation is kind of up in the air. And James Madison, if they can just control what they can control, I think they're in a situation of they could find themselves playing in the playoffs. And how cool would that be for James Madison fans?
100%. And, you see right there, Navy at the top of the conference. I know there are so many one-loss teams in the American, but like that Notre Dame loss, how bad they lost over the weekend, that's not going to age well for Navy. So if Navy ends up winning the American and their record is the same as James Madison's, where James Madison only lost to Louisville by 14 points, a ranked Louisville team, and then you look at Navy and Navy got blown out by Notre Dame. Like you look at the American, they're beating each other up within the conference, and that's a testament to how good the conference is. But a handful of teams in the American have been blown out this year by Power 4 competition, whereas JMU, while they've only played one Power Forward school, they were competitive. And it was early in the season when they were rotating quarterbacks between Sluka and Barnett. So if that game happens now, I don't know if it's the same result. I think the JMU is the best Group of 5 team in the country.
Yeah, going back, reversing gears a little bit, talk about Virginia Tech. Early in this season, they had that loss to Old Dominion. I'm sure you were all over that, working that beat. What was kind of the excitement level around the programming? I mean, there was a time there where folks thought Old Dominion could be the team that was the Group of 5 champion. But a couple of tough losses for them. Just kind of curious, kind of the buy-in around the Monarchs program and how much it's changed, in my lifetime being someone from that region.
Yeah, 100%. It's so interesting because, Ricky Ronnie's a pretty guarded coach, right? So he doesn't give you much. So they say they don't pay attention to the outside head coach speak, right? They don't pay attention to the outside noise. They're not super revealing with injuries and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, the Indiana game, while it looked good on paper, ultimately, Colton Joseph had those 270-plus yard rushing touchdowns, and I'm not trying to take away anything from ODU. Their defense was spectacular, especially their linebackers against Indiana, and in the red zone too. They were great. But Old Dominion didn't take a single offensive snap inside Indiana's 50, right? So Indiana, you could point to a lot of different things. You see how they're playing right now. But that is a loss that aged very well. A 2-score loss aged very well. You go to Huntington, West Virginia. That's a place that Old Dominion has never won a football game. Huntington, West Virginia, against Marshall. That's a tough place to play, Jones C. Edwards Stadium. So I'm not surprised. Carlos Del Rio Wilson, I saw him when I went to Syracuse, and he had a lot of potential as a dual threat guy, comes to a Group of 5 school, plays a little bit lesser competition than what the ACC was for him as a third-string guy, and is, evidently a much better quarterback. And then you go to James Madison, another tough, really place to play. I was at that game on their homecoming. They were trading blows in the first half. It was such a good game. I think it was 28-27. There was 56 combined points heading into the locker room. And you thought, okay, this might be the first time that Old Dominion has beaten James Madison in, I believe, 13 years in football on James Madison's field, right? So that would have been a historic win. Yeah, man. I mean, it would have been great to see Old Dominion in the college football playoff scenario, but there was a lot of buzz around him, and it was really exciting for the first 4 or 5 weeks or so before the Marshall game. They ran into some stiff competition on the road, and I still think they're a good team. Colton Joseph has still put himself in a position for potentially earning Sunbelt Player of the Year, but the turnovers are probably going to hurt him. I think ODU will finish out the season strong. Ricky Ronnie will get his first winning season as a head coach if they win against Troy this Thursday, which I think will happen.
And turning gears to the NFL now, Washington Commanders 44-22 loss this past week to Detroit. Are they finished? Do they have a chance? Do they have a path to the playoffs? They've been so injured. Sounds like Jaden Daniels isn't going to be on the IR. Is it worth him even playing anymore this season? It's kind of the thought that comes to my mind. Dan Quinn makes the announcement this week. He's going to take over defense coordinator. It seems like they're trying to fix something, but at this point in the year, we only have 8 or 9 weeks left.
Yeah, well, never say never, because the 2020 Washington Commanders with Taylor Heineke went 7-9 and made the playoffs, and they almost beat Tom Brady's Buccaneers, right? And that was the Taylor Heineke legacy game. But I don't see it with this group because their defense is just so abhorrently porous. Like, their passing defense is so bad. And Jaden Daniels, while he has not been ruled out for the year, I don't know why, because you looked at, there was a video of him that went viral pregame before Detroit, and he was in one of those immobilized arm casts.
Yeah.
He should not come back given the state of the team and the fact that his number one wide receiver in Terry McLaurin can't seem to be healthy either, and Deebo Samuel is in and out, right? Like, they've lost their best pass rusher in Dorrance Armstrong. He led the team in sacks. It's a bad team. Like Marcus Mariota said after the Detroit game, we are not who we thought we were going into the season. And it happens. And I think a lot of this can be pointed to, last season and even this season, a lot was said about the oldest team in the NFL thing. You had guys that came in last season. A lot of them were on prove it deals, So a lot of them, like the Austin Eckler's, the Zach Ertz, and I'm not saying anything about Zach Ertz because he still is a reliable red zone target as a tight end. But you had guys that came in, Bobby Wagner, another guy that came in last year, right? You had guys that were on prove it deals, guys that were looking to make statements. Von Miller was another case this year where he hasn't lived up to expectations of Von Miller of old. The guys from last season came in, and I think they just overachieved because they had a lot of guys who were amped up. Dan Quinn, the commander standard, Adam Peters. It was just Josh Harris. Like that whole organization was buzzed up. And I think that they got lucky a lot. The ball bounced their way a handful of times. They won a handful of single score games. And this season, the ball has not bounced their way, and they've been injured a ton. And you can't win a ton of games when, Brian Robinson is traded after seeing 2 games of sample size by Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt. And Marcus Mariota is your starting quarterback on a consistent basis, and your offensive line is shredded and your defense is completely shredded. Yeah, I think that just shut Jaden down, chalk this season up, and just look forward to the draft and maybe try to get like Caleb Downs or something, because he's an elite defensive player and they need secondary help.
Yeah, they need help everywhere. Even playmakers. There aren't a lot of playmakers. It doesn't help that most of them have been injured this year. I mean, McLaurin has just been there was the holdout and, how much we're going to spend on him. And then he's been injured. And then when he's been healthy, he hasn't shown a whole lot either. I mean, they need playmakers. They need defense. They just need to get younger. It'll be interesting to see if they can, make some deals. But I think I agree with you that they got to, let's shut some things down, get to the end of the year. I think they have a good quarterback. I like Dan Quinn. I think he's proven himself that he's, can still coach in the NFL. Obviously they made it to the NFC Championship last year, but it'll be interesting to see what they can do in the offseason. But James, thanks so much for stopping by. Any last thoughts on Virginia sports in general and everything's going on in the region?
High school football playoffs, man.
Yeah.
First round, you got everybody pretty much makes it into the picture, but we'll be seeing you in person probably really soon, because we're going to be crossing paths.
How about that? We'll finish with this. We'll talk a little Class 6 before we go. How good is Oscar Smith? They get the 1 seed. Our Thomas Dale around here got the 2 seed. I think Manchester around here has got the 3, and I think Lansdowne's got the 4 seed in that region. How good's Lansdowne? How good's Oscar Smith? As some of our viewers aren't maybe so familiar with those teams.
Yeah, Lansdowne's got a kid in Anthony Turner who's really good. He's their quarterback. He's a solid player. But Oscar Smith is obviously, if you want to beat the king, you got to really beat the king.
Yeah.
Oscar Smith, reigning Class 6 state champions. I think that Travis Johnson missed 4 games this year. I don't know if you heard about that whole debacle, that whole story of like the YouTube channel and everything like that, but he missed 4 games this year. He's coming back. He's getting into a groove. They have a really reliable wide receiver too in Trey McGlown. They have a 2-way player in Quali Price who's getting interceptions, scoring touchdowns for them. They are a very balanced team, and I feel like, especially in this market, we take them for granted consistently of just how talented they are. They have multiple 4-star players on the offensive side of the ball. On the defensive side of the ball, they got a kid like Jalen Koval is going to UVA next year. So I think that Oscar Smith will find themselves once again in the region championship game, and they're going to be a really, really tough out because I think they've only gotten better.
Yeah, their biggest matchup's probably Thomas Dale, who has the other bye. This season, they've been defensively incredible and offensively suspect. And so they've been able to stay close against good teams and win a lot of games. But Oscar Smith's been doing that since I was in high school. I mean, they beat us, I think, in a JV game 66-0 at Lakewood.
Nope.
So. So I'm well aware of what Oscar Smith is, but we're excited for the postseason. And like you said, I'm sure we'll be seeing you soon.
Yeah, 100%, man. I appreciate you having me on. It's going to be a nice ride here for the next month and a half of crossover.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Thanks so much, James. Appreciate it.
Thank you.